You have tried every trick in the book, and somehow your hair still looks tired by lunchtime. Get ready for 5 haircuts that make you look effortlessly rich, elegant, and younger, starting the moment you leave the chair. I research worst style and beauty mistakes and youth-boosting fixes for mature women, so you get simple, proven transformations that work instantly. Today we are perfecting 5 rejuvenating haircuts to look 10 years younger, rich, and elegant at 50 plus. And by part 3, you will want to pause and look in the mirror. I mean it. We are covering a face-lifting bob, a jaw-softening shag, a bold pixie of confidence, a lob with instant polish, and a feathered cut that quietly erases years off your face. And the very first one, it is the exact cut stylists reach for when a client should walk out looking like old money. 1. The soft layered bob. You have been asking your stylist for just a trim for years now, telling yourself that keeping the same blunt, one length cut is the safe choice. Have you ever wondered why that safe choice keeps making you feel a little more invisible every single year? Here is the truth almost nobody tells you. A blunt, heavy cut with no layering sits like a weight along your jaw. And as your face naturally softens with age, that weight drags everything downward instead of lifting it. Your hairdresser has never told you that the exact same length, cut with movement instead of a straight line, can lift your whole face without a single needle. This is where the soft layered bob comes in, and it works for 5 specific reasons. First, the face framing pieces around your jawline draw the eye upward toward your cheekbones instead of down toward your neck. Second, the internal layering removes bulk without removing length, so you keep body instead of flatness. Third, the angle of the cut, slightly longer in front and shorter toward the back, creates a lifting effect along the jaw that a blunt cut can never achieve. Fourth, this shape works with silver, gray, and warm blonde tones equally well, catching light instead of flattening it. And fifth, because the layers are internal rather than choppy, the whole style stays polished even on a lazy morning. This one is everything. Honestly, the soft layered bob is the one cut I wish someone had recommended to me 20 years earlier, because nobody explained that shorter and safe are not the same thing as flattering. If you are still asking for a one-length blunt cut, swap that request for face framing layers landing right at your jawline, and ask your stylist for internal layering rather than a single flat plane. The difference shows the very first time you catch your reflection in a window. Maintenance is simple here. A trim every 8 to 10 weeks keeps the face framing pieces sharp, and a lightweight mousse on damp hair is all you need to keep the movement alive through the whole day. There is one detail about this cut that changes how your entire face reads on camera or in photographs. It is the way the layers are angled toward your chin rather than straight down. That single angle is the difference between a bob that ages you and a bob that lifts you, and most stylists never explain it out loud. Your bone structure was built for this cut. It was always there, waiting for the right shape to reveal it. Your natural elegance does not need volume products or hot tools working overtime just to look put together by 9 in the morning. A friend of mine got this exact cut last spring, and within a week 3 different people asked if she had done something to her skin. She had not touched her skincare routine at all. It was the bob quietly lifting everything above her collarbone. But if you think the bob is the only cut capable of this kind of lift, wait until you see what happens when we add movement and texture to longer hair. Because part 2 takes this same lifting principle and turns it into something even more transformative for your jawline. 2. The long layered shag with curtain bangs. 504 words. This one is everything. That is the phrase I use for a cut that genuinely earns it, and the long layered shag with curtain bangs earns it completely. Picture this. You wake up, you towel dry your hair, and instead of styling for 20 minutes, you finger comb it once and walk out the door looking like you planned every strand. That is not a fantasy. That is what a well-cut shag does for mature hair, and almost nobody over 50 has been offered this option. Here is why. Stylists often assume longer hair on a mature woman needs to be tamed into something smooth and controlled. But the real key insight is that heavily controlled, smoothed hair actually reads as older, because it removes all the natural movement that youthful hair has. The shag works because it does the opposite of taming. 5 specific things make this cut transformative. The curtain bangs part naturally around your face and soften the forehead lines without a single product. The heavy layering throughout removes weight so fine or thinning hair looks fuller instead of stringier. The choppy ends catch light unevenly, which tricks the eye into seeing texture and thickness rather than flatness. The face framing length hits right at the jaw and cheek, echoing the same lifting effect as the bob, but with the versatility of longer hair. And because the layers are cut at varying angles, this style works whether you blow dry it smooth or let it air dry with natural wave. Yes, that's simple. If you are still flat ironing your hair completely straight every single morning, swap that habit for a loose wave with a 1-inch barrel, because texture is doing more heavy lifting for your face than smoothness ever could. And if your current bangs are heavy and blunt across the forehead, swap them for soft curtain pieces that part naturally at the center. There is one detail your stylist may never mention unless you ask directly. The curtain bang only works with this cut if it is cut dry, not wet, because wet cutting on fine or wavy hair almost always leaves it too short once it dries and settles into its natural shape. Maintenance for this cut is refreshingly low effort. A trim every 10 to 12 weeks keeps the layers from growing out shapeless, and a texturizing spray on dry hair is the only product this style genuinely needs. Honestly, this is the cut I recommend to women who tell me they miss having big hair, without wanting to look like they are trying too hard. It gives you volume that looks effortless instead of engineered. You deserve a cut that works with your natural texture instead of fighting it every single morning before your coffee has even finished brewing. But softness and movement are only half the story, because part 3 takes a completely different approach, one that some women fear the most and almost every stylist secretly wishes more mature women would try. 3. The textured pixie crop. This is the one. The cut most women over 50 are terrified to even say out loud in the salon chair. A textured pixie crop. Take a breath, because I promise this is not the pixie your mother wore in 1985. There is a version of this cut that reads as confidence and elegance rather than giving up, and by the end of this part you will know exactly how to describe it so your stylist gets it right the first time. Here is the key insight nobody tells you. Most women avoid short hair because they associate short with severe, masculine, or aging. But the real reason short hair sometimes ages a woman has nothing to do with the length itself. It is choppy, uneven texture with no shape around the crown that creates that harsh look. A properly cut pixie does the exact opposite of harsh. This one is everything. 5 specific elements make a pixie work for a mature face. The length left slightly longer on top creates volume at the crown, which lifts the entire face instantly. The soft graduated sides taper gently rather than buzzing close, which keeps femininity intact. The texture through the top is cut with a razor rather than blunt shears, giving movement instead of a helmet shape. The nape is kept slightly longer than expected, avoiding that dated, cropped look from decades ago. And the front pieces are left with enough length to be swept to either side, giving you styling flexibility depending on your mood. There is one technique that changes how your entire face reads in this cut. It is asking your stylist for disconnection between the top and the sides. That single word in your consultation changes everything about the final shape. Honestly, I used to think pixies only worked on women with delicate, narrow features. I was wrong. This cut works on round faces, square jaws, and soft angles alike, because the volume at the crown does the balancing work regardless of your bone structure. If you are still avoiding short hair because you fear it will look severe, swap the idea of short for the idea of sculpted, because a sculpted pixie with crown volume reads as elegant, not harsh. And if your current shortcut already feels flat and shapeless, swap your flat iron for a small round brush used only at the roots. Maintenance here matters more than any other cut on this list. A trim every 4 to 6 weeks is non-negotiable, because pixies grow out of shape quickly, and a small amount of matte paste worked through dry hair keeps the texture defined without looking greasy. Those beautiful eyes deserve a frame that does not compete with them, and a well-cut pixie does exactly that, drawing every ounce of attention straight to your face. If short hair still feels like too big a leap, part 4 brings the volume and confidence of the pixie into a length that meets you exactly in the middle. 4. The rounded lob. Have you ever noticed how some women in their 60s walk into a room looking polished without appearing to try at all? 9 times out of 10, that polish is coming from one specific length of hair. The rounded lob, sitting just above the shoulders, is quietly the most requested cut among women who want to look expensive without a dramatic change. Here is the key insight most women miss. Anything past the shoulder tends to pull hair straight down along gravity's path, which flattens volume at the root and drags the whole face downward with it. The lob solves this simply by ending the length before gravity wins. You needed to hear this. 5 specific reasons this cut earns its reputation. The length landing right at or slightly below the collarbone keeps enough weight for a smooth, polished finish while staying short enough to bounce with movement. The rounded shape, slightly shorter in the back and longer toward the front, elongates the neck instantly. The subtle layering through the ends prevents that heavy, static look that longer blunt cuts often have. The cut works equally well straight, wavy, or blown out with a round brush, making it the lowest maintenance option on this entire list. And because the length sits above the collarbone, it draws attention upward toward your jaw and cheekbones rather than down toward your shoulders. There is one small technique your colorist can pair with this cut that changes everything about how rich it looks on camera. A subtle money piece, a few lighter face framing pieces near your part, catches light every time you move your head, and it takes your colorist exactly 4 minutes to do. If you are still wearing your hair well past your shoulders and feeling like it never quite looks finished, swap that extra length for a collarbone length lob, and notice how much faster your styling routine becomes. And if you have been avoiding layers because you fear thinning, swap heavy blunt ends for soft internal layers that add movement without removing density. Maintenance for the lob is refreshingly simple. A trim every 8 weeks keeps the rounded shape intact, and a light smoothing serum on the ends is really all this cut asks of you. Honestly, this is the cut I recommend most often to women transitioning out of long hair, who are not ready for anything shorter. It gives you nearly all of the polish of a bob with a little more length to hold onto emotionally. Your natural elegance shows up the moment this length hits your shoulders, because the eye finally has somewhere clean to land instead of getting lost in extra inches of hair. A client of mine switched to this length after 15 years of long hair, and she told me afterward that people at her office started asking if she had changed her skincare routine. She had not touched a single product. It was simply the lob doing quiet work around her jawline every single day. One cut remains, and it might be the most universally flattering of them all, because Part 5 works with a technique that softens every single face shape without a single inch being cut off. 5. Feathered layers with side-swept fringe. This is doing more for your face than you realize, and you have probably never even asked for it by name. Feathered layers with a soft side-swept fringe. You have spent years assuming your face shape is simply difficult, that nothing quite balances your jawline or softens your forehead the way it does for other women. Have you ever wondered if the real problem was never your face at all? Here is the key insight that changes everything. Feathering is not a length or a cut. It is a technique, layered fine gradations cut at the ends of the hair that blend rather than blunt. This technique is universally flattering because it works with any face shape, any length, and any texture, softening hard lines wherever your hair meets your skin. You needed to hear this. 5 specific things make this final technique so effective. The feathered ends around your face soften the transition between hair and skin, which visually reduces the appearance of sagging or heaviness along the jaw. The side-swept fringe, angled rather than straight across, opens up your eye area instead of hiding it. The graduated layering throughout adds visual movement that catches light from multiple angles, tricking the eye into perceiving more density. This technique layers seamlessly onto any of the 4 cuts we just covered, meaning you do not have to choose between feathering and your favorite length. And because the feathering is subtle rather than choppy, it ages beautifully between salon visits instead of growing out awkwardly. Yes, that's simple. If your current fringe or face framing pieces are cut in one straight blunt line, swap that request for feathered ends that blend gradually into the rest of your cut. And if you have been parting your hair in the exact same spot for the past decade, swap your part by even half an inch, because it changes where shadows fall across your face entirely. There is one technique your stylist can use with a razor rather than shears that most chain salons skip because it takes extra time. It softens every single ended strand individually rather than cutting them all at one blunt depth. And it takes your colorist and stylist working together exactly 10 extra minutes to transform the whole result. Maintenance here is simple. A trim every 8 to 10 weeks keeps the feathering fresh, and a small amount of shine serum on dry ends keeps the movement catching light instead of falling flat. Your bone structure has been waiting this entire video for a technique that finally works with it instead of against it, and feathering is that technique. Honestly, this is the detail most women skip because it feels too small to matter. But I have watched a simple feathering adjustment change how a woman's entire face reads on camera, more than any product ever could. It costs nothing extra at most salons, And it takes almost no additional time in the chair. Ask for it by name at your next appointment, and pay attention to how differently your reflection greets you the very next morning. 5 cuts, 1 universal truth. The right shape does not fight your face. It finishes the sentence your bone structure has been trying to say for years. You just learned 5 cuts that most women spend years and thousands of dollars trying to discover on their own, from the face-lifting bob all the way through to the feathering technique that ties every single one of them together. Wear this with the confidence it was always meant to carry. Tell me which of these 5 cuts matches the change you have been quietly wanting to make. Next time we are tackling the one coloring mistake that adds 10 years to your face overnight, and it has nothing to do with going gray. Like this video, subscribe to Timeless Wisdom Path, and I will see you in the next one.